So this is my final presentation for my final major project, which is a short film called I'm Sorry. So I chose my idea because I found that not a lot of films in the romance genre do focus on the argument in the relationship. They just think, oh, you've got the problem, yeah, you're happy, you've got a problem, fix it, you're done. When I just wanted to show that to make it more realistic for the viewer. And also it does make the relationship stronger if you do have arguments. And again, I wanted to reassure couples in modern times that it's okay to have arguments and doubts in a relationship, and which is something that I believe most TV and films don't do, and they do glamorise relationships an awful lot, so I wanted to stay away from that. So my influences for this project were the directors James Cameron, James Cameron, who directed the 1997 film Titanic, and Nick Cassavetes, I think, who directed The Notebook in 2004. They both kind of feature an argument between a couple of some sort, so it could be The Notebook where Annie and Noah have a fight and they split up for several years only to be reunited, or in Titanic when Cal and Rose, they don't really like each other, so Rose goes off with Jack. I also looked at Nicholas Sparks, who wrote the book for The Notebook, and just saw how he played it out in the book. And I looked at the argument scenes from Dirty Dancing and Gone with the Wind, and I feel like there's a few more argument scenes in Gone with the Wind than there are in most romance films. So for my primary research, I did an interview with 3 people, which did help a lot more than other pieces of my research, because I was able to talk about real life relationships and how they're affected, etc. I also did my research into narrative, helped me because I couldn't really find any short films that ended on a cliffhanger, not in the romance genre anyway. And I found that my narrative isn't the same structure as Todorov's theory, so I don't really have a new equilibrium, and the first equilibrium is kind of in the middle of the disruption and the repair. It's really confusing, but it does make sense in my film. So my most important part of my pre-production was the script, because I did have to explain a lot of the story through dialogue and what happened, etc. I did do a lot of the pre-production over the Easter break, so then I could start filming as soon as I came back. I did spend about 2-3 days on the script, just focusing on that, making sure I had everything, and I also had the novels Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights on hand, just so I could have a look through and reference and just see how my relationships with the characters were like between them. So the issues I faced and how I solved them. The breakout area can get very busy very easily, so I did film on different days, which meant I didn't rush filming to make sure everything was all done in one day before the breakout area got busy and the shots weren't disrupted. However, that did mean I had to keep the continuity, which I do need to do some pickup shots for characters' costumes. Again, for the continuity, I had to make sure they were wearing the same clothes, because I was filming on different days. I had volunteered being in other people's productions, so when it came to filming, we would sit down and just say who's filming this day, who's filming that day, so we could work around, make sure we all got the time to film we need. And the actors remembering their lines, I did do a run through beforehand, and they did have scripts for a few weeks. However, I made sure I had a script on set with me at all times, so then if actors did have trouble remembering their lines, I could just look and tell them before we start shooting again. So, my current state of the project, I haven't actually changed this. My pre-production is completed, my research is fully completed. I have done my filming, however I do need to do my pickup shots for my final edit, and my first edit is done. So, I am actually really pleased with all the work I've done so far. I'm pleased with how the first edit turned out. It turned out a bit, I didn't expect it to be as well thought out as it was. I do need to change a few shots in scene 3 because one of the characters doesn't have a beard throughout the film, whereas scene 3 he does, so I do need to reshoot that this week and then edit that all in. That shouldn't take too long. But I have checked all my paperwork and I'm still going through some, making sure I've done it all to the best of my ability, just so that I can get the best grade possible. So my first edit has been completed. Pickup shots, I'm not too sure when they're going to be shot yet. I'm hoping by Thursday. My final edit will be done by Friday. And completing the first edit, filming and final edit sections of my evaluation will be done by Friday. And then we have the director's commentary, which is due in next Friday. I do have a draft edit for you, which is my scene 2 for my film.
It was an awful summer day. We were together just watching the film. I got a text. He got a text. It was Raymond. He smiled and answered.
All I did was move to answer the text. Nothing more, nothing less.
Of course I got upset. He never notices me at college. What was I supposed to do? When we were alone, that's the only time he would talk to me.
She got annoyed. I didn't know why she got upset. She just started becoming it. Then she started shouting.
I started shouting at him.
I tried explaining, but she wouldn't listen.
I didn't want to hear his excuses. I wanted him out.
She told me to leave. I waited for her to let me back in, but she didn't. So I went back.
I checked to see if he waited, but he already left.
And that's all of that.
Okay, well done. Why did you use the echo in that scene?
Really because it's narrative. They're explaining what happened in the present day, but the flashbacks in the past, so I wanted to kind of differ that. However, I will be turning one of them into just a normal voice over, because I feel like it's a bit confusing after hearing it a little bit.
Yeah, you need to be a little bit more selective as to how you use the echo, because you've applied it to both people, and then whenever they're both talking together, echoes it's applied again. It's just a little bit too messy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a little bit more selective, you will find that it becomes more effective because of that. But well shot and nicely put together, so I'm looking forward to seeing a whole lot of it. I like the idea of the influences that you've had for this, okay? Because you've got a very clear idea as to what you want to do, and I like the idea that those influences come from modern film, but also some classic literature as well. Okay. So could you just give me one or two examples, okay, of a scene from either classical literature or from modern film that you think, yeah, this is what really works for me, and this is what I was trying to replicate?
Probably the scene between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice is personally one of my favourite scenes. They're in, I believe, the library in Elizabeth Bennet's house, and he has just proposed to her, and she doesn't take it very lightly because he's very cold towards anyone really, and she thinks it's a bit of a joke, and he's only wanted to marry her because she's a woman, and a woman must marry a man to kind of get power, and women are just something to be trained from. So she kind of does stand up for her rights, which was very unheard of back in the 1800s when the book was written. So I kind of wanted to replicate that because he does, my character Liam, he does like Sarah, who is the main female lead, and he does want a future with her. However, she's like, he just wants me because I'm a girl and I'm easy to get. So I just wanted to replicate that but turn it into a modern day situation. So rather than he wants me for marriage, he wants me to play with, just to like, because I'm a girl, I can be thrown away when the next best thing comes along.
Right, okay. I mean, go back to the classical literature. The reason we understand what's going on and the background to it is because it's a very detailed book. Okay, there's very rich sort of character construction, and lots of backstory. That works, that we need for that particular book. Your film's a short film. It's going to be 5-6 minutes long. How have you managed to give that sort of backstory, give that sort of narrative, and still allow the audience to understand it?
I've kind of, in scene 3 particularly, Sarah kind of sits there and explains, oh, I'm a bit jealous because he's got a friend who he's noticed who's a female, so I'm scared he's going to run off with her. And she's also had troubles with him in the past about the relationship as well, and she kind of explains that to her friends, therefore explaining to the audience what's going on, building the sort of backstory of the relationship.
Okay, very good. In terms of your research, okay, what do you think was the most important piece of research that really helped inform your project?
It was probably the interviews, for definite. It's just I sat there and I wanted it to be relatable to the audience. My audience is teenagers to young adults, and mainly females, because females watch the romantic genre. So I did want to sit down with 3 people from my target audience and kind of speak about how their relationships are. I asked any insecurities about the relationship, if they argue a lot, etc. So then I could build a relationship between the 2 people. So it might be, I did find out that most people do argue a lot, and they mainly argue because they're scared of the other person finding someone else who's better than them in their eyes. So I did kind of want to portray that, especially with Megan, a character we don't see but we hear of, who happens to be Liam's friend. We find out that they did have a thing before Sarah came along, however that's no more because he does like Sarah, but Sarah thinks, oh, Megan's better than me, he'll want to go off with her and I'll be stuck here on my own. So.
Okay, right. Thanks very much, Chloe.